There were some recent announcements that HR systems are being reconfigured. Is that in the near term, medium term, long term, or forget it, that's like science fiction?
Right now, it's how do we increase the productivity and output of the company through the use of AI.
We're actually still at the stage of just doing a lot of thinking through, like, in an AI-powered world, what do we actually want to be asking of our employees?
About 30% of workers out there, they're at least starting. 20% of people who are doing it, and they don't want to tell their boss. And then you have the other half of the population that's sort of sitting there going like, wait and see.
I think HR has tended to be a little bit slow in terms of thinking about the power of this.
My job title officially is President of Global Product and Innovation, and unofficially I do whatever Maria asks me to do. So, and I have the privilege of working for her, and then this vision would not have been possible without the support from the CEO. So it's, as you guys know, how corporations work, and without her dreams, it's very difficult to put, actions together. And Oz is helping me put those actions together. And all of you, thanks for coming second time, and great to see you all. So today, for a change, rather than being asked questions, I'm going to ask some questions, especially of CHROs. And my fellow panelists are there. I'm going to invite them for a bit. And you might be wondering why I have the privilege to ask CHROs some questions, because I used to be one of them. Ta-da! So you might be wondering, okay, what is an ex-CHRO doing product and innovation? So you got to go back a little. Prior to the CHRO, I was a tech person. So you might be wondering why the tech person became a CHRO. So it's like a riddle, right? So just stay with me for a second. It makes all sense, in a way. I used to be a tech person doing PeopleSoft. Anybody knows PeopleSoft stuff? Yeah, exactly. Hey, Vivek. And then I was a client of ADP, and then ADP hired me, and I became a CHRO after a few years. So that's the link. And then once that gig is out, then Maria became CEO, and she said, hey, come and do this thing, and I'm here. Make sense now? Yeah. Okay. All right. Clear as mud. Beautiful. So let me bring the panelists, Helen, Hannah, Brian, Amy, please. And they're representing amazing companies. Thank you. If you're wondering, in this age of AI, why are we talking to the CHRO? Seems like people are going to be displaced and agents are coming and robots are coming. But I have a different perspective on that one. At least that's the rumor. So we thought that why don't we ask the CHROs what do they think about how the world of work is changing in the ecosystem of AI coming over and taking the world. So why don't we start with you, my friend?
Okay.
How are you thinking about it?
Well, first of all, I will say that we don't know what we don't know. And I think the challenge for all of us is working, for the most part, with this very ambiguous something, where the hype seems to be running ahead of the substance that's following behind. And so I think the challenge for us is trying to determine, because I found myself going like slightly frenetic in trying to read everything, consume everything, follow everything, and found that it was feeling peanut butter spreading like, and that instead the focus needs to be on a couple of areas where we feel we can really see a material return on investment. And so I think to be credible, especially working in a SaaS business where we're really promising what AI can do for our ultimate customers, to be credible internally, we also have to, as a function, be looking at what productivity gains can we get internally. And so what I will say is we're talking about it from a productivity gain perspective. We're not talking about it from a how do we displace people, how do we consume roles by having agents come in. And so right now it's how do we increase the productivity and output of the company through the use of AI. So even the messaging and communication, I think, has to be really, really delicate.
Amy, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say very similar. Like I sort of see us being in like the age of efficiency in AI. We're still in the very early days of it. And so a lot of the work that I see taking hold is all about that. It's really about moving work rather than displacing employees. And it's really about how you drive more and more efficiency in the work that they're doing. I know in our team, we have started to implement some ways of using bots and things like that, or other ways of driving efficiency, but it hasn't really displaced employees. It's just moved the work around so that people are doing less administrative work, they're doing more strategic work, and I think there's a lot to be gained there. I think the other change that I've seen is that there was this sort of early fear about, that people would be losing their jobs, and I think as we've moved along the kind of maturity curve with AI, people are relaxing about that. I don't see as much fear as I used to, but we're still early in this, and I think people are still, finding their feet underneath them in terms of what this is going to mean for the future.
Excellent. Hannah, I think Anthropic obviously at the forefront of this evolution.
I think about this topic a lot.
Yeah. So can't wait to hear how you guys are thinking about it.
I mean, this is building on what they're both saying. We are certainly in the early days. We are seeing AI capabilities advance very quickly too. So, a year or two ago, the things that I was seeing AI could do, I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. The things that I'm seeing now from what Anthropic and other companies are putting out, I'm like, oh, wow, now we're really talking. And we don't know where that curve stops. So I think we're on the cusp of something transformative here. What we don't know yet, and this future is still unwritten, is what exactly is the shape of that transformation for the economy and for what humans are doing. And I'm a big history buff, so I'll pull from a historical example here, but like in the 80s when Excel first came out, there were a lot of people very nervous that Excel was gonna automate away jobs. That's not what happened with Excel. I think I can kind of look around and see everybody in the room here. In fact, what happened with Excel was like expansion of the pie of the economy and of what jobs were even possible, and also who could access those jobs and what specialized skills you needed. Then meanwhile, there's plenty of other examples of new technologies coming and automating humans out of existence. Like the population of elevator operators in the United States is much smaller now than it was 100 years ago. So we have meaningful examples of both of these for the economy. I think we don't know yet which one AI is going to be. We have some early evidence of this. Anthropic actually just shipped an economic index that is kind of displaying some data of how people are using Claude, our model, in their jobs. One of the ways we talk about this is augmentation versus automation. We are seeing heavy augmentation of human labor in the economy. I obviously, as an HR leader, and I think many of the people in this room would really want to see that augmentation. And let's think about AI in a way that drives efficiency, yes, but also what ventures are in our business that we are not tackling today because we're spending time on things that could be automated, or we're not tackling today because we haven't dreamed them yet. And if we had this amazing augmentative partner in generative LLMs, we could dream of that thing. There's things that humans could be doing that we're not doing today that with more intelligence at our fingertips, we could be doing. So the way I think about it and the way I want folks in the room to be thinking about it is think about augmentation. And yes, that absolutely means efficiencies, but also think about what else your team could tackle. What else could your jobs look like in the future if you have this tool at your fingertips, in the same way that's somebody in the 80s couldn't have dreamed what would be doable with Excel for somebody that has only vaguely moderate data or technical skills.
Excellent.
That's my pitch. I swear I'm not selling anything. But and again, we're only at the early days of this, and I think this future isn't written yet, and we don't know which way it's going to go. But I would want everyone in this room and at this conference to be helping build that future of augmentation and a world that's better for humans.
Yeah. I think that language actually helps a lot because the word efficiency keys off a lot of fears in employees' heads. Pew just put a piece of research out in the past couple of weeks that said there's actually the number was almost 2x higher percentage of Americans who actually were concerned about Gen AI causing job losses as it making potential for new jobs. And we keep saying year of efficiency, year of efficiency, year of efficiency. You shouldn't be surprised when some employees hear layoffs, layoffs, layoffs. The reality is what we're seeing is there's these different groups of people, right? There's about 30% of workers out there that are at least starting. Some of them are really far into it. I've got some friends who are, we were talking about this backstage, wickedly into AI and are sort of superhuman almost in what they're building and doing. You have people who are adopting to it. You then have the secret cyborgs. You got about 20% of people who are doing it and they don't want to tell their boss, in part because they're afraid they're going to look like a cheat. By the way, Slack put a piece of research out talking about this. I don't want to be seen as cheating or incompetent, so I'm not going to say anything about it because we haven't had the conversation as a team. And then you got the other half of the population that's sort of sitting there going wait and see. I'm not sure yet what this is going to do for me. And the more you can talk about augmentation, and importantly, the more you can talk about what outcomes we're trying to generate as opposed to do more with less, the more you're going to get people engaged in a conversation about how can we actually use this in ways that are going to help me as well as helping the organization.
Right, do more with more. We can dream of a future that is more abundant for everybody because we have more intelligence at our fingertips instead of just a future that is like automating people out of jobs or like causing job loss.
So to that point, Brian, I would love to poll here a little bit quickly. In your own organization, meaning HR function, have you rolled out any tools to your population, either HR department or broadly all associates in your company? I think the answer, Anthropic, is the easy one, but I want to start
Yeah,
here.
I mean, we have tools everywhere. We've
Yeah.
got them embedded in recruiting, in learning, in operations. Some where it's existing technology that are putting their own AI layer on top. So we're getting gains from a ServiceNow, for example. But others where we're going out and buying a best of breed that's giving us a lift in everything from working with an avatar to help you have a coaching conversation to gains that we're making around interviewing as well in talent acquisition. So we're embedding it everywhere. And I also would say to get around the secret bot, what did you call
Secret
it?
cyborg.
Cyborg.
Secret
By the way,
cyborg.
that's an Ethan Mollick thing. I shouldn't claim credit for it.
To get around that, we're also massively encouraging, and we talk about AI fluency. We want an organization that's AI fluent.
Yeah.
And so be completely unapologetic and shout from the rooftops with your use cases around where you are leveraging it, as opposed to feeling that you're having to do it behind the curtain.
Yeah.
What about you, Amy?
Yeah, I would say we're in a very similar place. So we have it, our job right now is to embed it in everything that we're doing. So some of that is apps that we're buying that have the AI technology included, and some of it are things that we're building ourselves. So we use some of our own technology because Databricks is also an AI company. And so we are doing a lot of really interesting predictive work. So one of the things that we're doing is that we built a predictive model around non-regretted attrition. So we can pretty much predict down to the person exactly where we're going to land on our headcount each quarter. But that's all done through the data collection and then the model that we built on top of that. So it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
And we're also thinking about it the same way because I think HR has tended to be a little bit slow in terms of thinking about the power of this change. And so we have also built it into job ladders and done the same thing about the reinforcement of how important this is in everything that we're doing. Every role in HR should be thinking about this and should be AI fluent.
Love that. I'm going to take notes and steal some of this. I don't want to pretend like we have all the answers on this, obviously, too. Like, again, we're at the forefront of something, and I think, my company is directly building models, and we are equally on the forefront to all of you in some ways. And sometimes we're like, wow, we didn't realize the model could do that. That's very cool. Let's integrate it. We obviously have it very closely integrated with the way a lot of our technical staff are working on a day-to-day basis. We do track this internally, and we do see some fairly large percentage of our technical staff using Claude for coding assistance on a fairly regular basis. There we talk about a driver versus navigator role too, of like sometimes Claude's in the driver's seat and you're the navigator. Like, where do we want to be going? That still requires a human right now kind of setting out that path. From an HR and people team perspective, many of these same things are things we're like working on and figuring out. One thing that I've tried to do a lot of, and I can only take mild credit here because my team has really stepped up and embraced this too, is just like bottoms up innovation. Like people on the team know best what their jobs are and what they could be using AI for on a day-to-day basis. So we're just trying to make it really safe for people to do that experimentation and that brainstorming. And where somebody has a good idea, then too, like really safe for people to bring that to the rest of the team and say, hey, I figured out this thing. Like, how do we all figure out this thing? There's someone on my team who's been running a really cute Claude and coffee meeting on a weekly basis that's literally just an hour for people to come and be like, this is what I used Claude for this week. Like, here's how it fits into my workflow and to brainstorm ideas. And so across the company, we're really just trying to make this say like, we haven't gone quite as far as job ladders. That's a great idea. But across the company, just really trying to bring it in and be like, no secret cyborgs here. Like, this is what we are trying to do. We're all at this, like, the forefront of the experimentation, and we need that bottoms-up innovation as well as the kind of tops-down encouragement for it.
Brian, do you see the market? I think you have 3 heads of HR people function here talking about, I saw a trend, right? If we have an existing vendor, we are expecting that vendor to provide AI solutions. So which means we are layering AI on top of the existing architecture. But there are other companies that are AI native that are coming into the marketplace to do exactly what the incumbent is supposed to be delivering. So how are you seeing the marketplace?
It's really interesting because I've had HR partners, people that I've been talking talking about exactly that trade-off, right? Which is, do I use the specialist tool that is built off of an AI native company to do something like coaching, right, for employees? Because there's some real value there, especially around things like neutralizing the gender gap that usually happens in coaching and mentorship. So do I use a specialist tool, or do I use a general purpose tool, an HR bot tool, or do I build it myself on top of a native application? Like, I know one firm that's using Gleam, for example, to try to build this out. And the trade-offs are the same ones that we saw when I was running the platform team at Slack. The specialist tools give you really deep, insightful capabilities. They are actually probably the best solution. But then you have to get people to use the specialized solution as opposed to the more generalized tool sets. And so you start thinking about things like, my HRBPs have a bunch of different burdens. Do I want to create some general purpose employee tools that will cover a wide range of use cases, or do I want to go deeper and narrower? And I think it's going to be interesting to watch those play out. Having been at Slack, having watched Microsoft, the generalist tool, take a wide swath in it, we know what the incumbents want to do.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be that competitive dynamic of better tool versus general purpose and already there
But
tool.
also thinking through the scaling lens, because then when you get to scale, you end up with this crazy proliferation of tech. Your tech stack's out of control. And so having been on that side of it, you're trying to make choices today that aren't going to have that consequence, which
Yeah.
again just adds to the complexity.
One CPO I was talking with said, I've got 25 different employee experience applications. I don't need 25 chatbots for my employees.
Yeah.
That brings up a question, though. How are you overcoming the concern your internal privacy, compliance, regulation teams, right? Hey, all these tools, how is our data protected? Is there a pushback internally from the other teams? How fast you're rolling out these tools, and how the adoption is happening as a result? Anything that you guys can share? Please free to jump in. There's no specific order here.
I mean, that's really where you're looking to your chief legal officer on the scale of risk averse to high risk. We just hired someone who's a lot more comfortable here, which is awesome, which means that we can move fast, and that shouldn't slow us down. But of course, we're constantly looking for any risk, and she's got a data privacy background too, which of course gives her a major lift herself for knowing how to navigate this. But yeah, we want, especially when you're dealing with customer data, there's no compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're very focused on that right now around sort of the data governance for all of the HR data that's in our data lake. It's probably the #1 priority for my team right now. It's just to think through that so that we build something that we feel can serve us for the long term. And we had taken some initial steps and then found that, maybe as we're looking at where the technology is going, it wasn't really secure enough. And so I think that foundational piece is really, really critical.
And these adoption cycles, are you seeing a trend, the velocity is going up, or are you doing like a big bang approach, roll out the tool to the entire company? Are you doing a pilot, proof of concept, general availability? How are you guys rolling these tools out in your
I
companies?
think there's probably two things I'm really thoughtful about. One is that we're trying to pick the things that align most closely with our strategy, because it's everywhere right now. And so you can actually sort of degrade the experience for people. So we're trying to pick a few things that are really critical for what we're trying to do within my team and what's best for the company. That's probably the first thing. And then the second thing is that even when we are rolling things out, we are trying to take a pilot approach first, learn from it, see what sticks, and then we can make iterations from there.
Okay. I'm assuming all of you probably in the similar bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'd probably say there's a bifurcation between like creative processes where handing out the tools and just go at it is easier. There's fewer barriers to it, and things that require answers. So I've worked on my own with BCG on a couple of clients where we're trying to roll out customer support tools, right? You have to get the data right first. I've seen it before where you roll the tool out, the underlying data stinks or has errors in it. There's immediate bodily rejection by the team that says this tool is not right. So therefore, you then go back and fix it, and you have to pay a price of trying to rebuild that trust.
The adoption's slow.
6 months later, so you just have an adoption problem. So you got to get the data, and this is like fairly well known at this point, but you got to get the data right first before you start piloting something and rolling it out. There's not instant answers that work well on that front.
Yeah.
I'd build on that a little bit and actually tying to the point of like tools that match the strategy. There's AI native tools versus tools that AI is built in. There's also what are the problems in your organization that you're trying to solve, and are you thinking about those problems in an AI native way? And we're spending, I don't have any amazing answers here too, but we're also spending a lot of time thinking through like, I'll use performance reviews as an example. Like, it's not just what tool do you want to use for performance reviews, but it's also like, how do we want to do performance reviews in a world where, first of all, we have lots of research on what is good and bad about performance reviews and what actually helps with employee development and employee feedback, and also in a world where like writing can come pretty cheap and fast if we are relying on models to help us with it. And so like, do we want to be asking employees like, you can write your self-performance review with Claude? Is that okay, yes or no? Like, we're actually still at the stage of just doing a lot of thinking through like, in an AI-powered world, what do we actually want to be asking of our employees? And who do we want to be as a company, and what do we want the employee experience to look like? And only then, once we've done more of that thought, going out to the market to say, okay, what are the tools that can support this or not? And one thing we're finding, I'll give a little shout out here, is like, we're not finding a ton of tools that can immediately support that on the market, because a lot of people are still building the tools for the old process or the tools for the old way of thinking. So, for anyone here who's an innovator or a startup company, like, there's a lot of room to have the conversations with the companies of like, but what do you actually want to be in the modern world of work? And we don't have to be porting over the like 1950s way of working into new AI tools. We can be really thinking about like modern AI-powered ways of working.
Speeding up the annual performance review that was already a broken process? Like, why?
Exactly. And
Why?
I think there's just lots of things like that across the company that it's like, look, these were already broken things, so like speeding them up or making them better.
Right.
Like, why? You could tear that down and just build a less broken thing.
Yes.
Shifting conversation to the agents for a second, there were some recent announcements that HR systems are being reconfigured to allow agents can be hired, managed, et cetera, et cetera. How you guys think about that? So HubSpot, as an example, you guys have created a marketplace of agents, right? So if that's going to be a secular trend, the current incumbents would have to adapt the existing systems of the records to allow the agents to come in and be tracked similar to the humans. Is that in the near term, medium term, long term, or forget it, that's like science fiction? How should we think about it?
I went to a Workday launch a couple of weeks ago, and they're already looking at within their, right now you house your employees and your contractors on Workday. Then you refresh product is you house your employees, your contractors, and your agents. And so they're trying to get around, they drew an analogy to in the day where you used to find a shadow finance organization or a shadow analytics organization because you weren't conscious of centralizing where everything owned. They don't want that to be true with agents, because if not, you're going to have duplication of effort happening everywhere, when actually there could be a skill set that you've captured, codified it, it's in the system, and then you're leveraging it. So they're already thinking about this, and I think we have to be running alongside figuring that out too.
Any comments?
I would say the same.
Yes, Brian.
There's an analogy. At Slack, on Slack's platform, you can build custom apps. We had a very large tech client that had built approximately 250,000 custom applications, which you can imagine creates chaos, because then which ones for which team in which place. The process 2-3 years later of going back and saying, okay, we need to standardize this, clean this up, all the rest of it, was not a small one to go back and do cleanup. That's why I think some people are a little bit concerned about, like, we can't let, not everybody's actually good at building agents in the first place. Not everybody wants to build agents, and you also need to think about what's the set of trade-offs about giving everybody access to the tool set versus having it go out there. The other one is back to like human reactions. How many of you live in San Francisco? How many of you saw the poster for the AI SDR that doesn't complain about work-life balance? I see a couple hands, you already knew where I was going. If as a tool provider, that did great things for them, it got them a lot of leads, but it also creates some of the havoc we were talking about earlier about people's perception of this as being replacement, not augmentation. So there's a communication balance to be had here too, and I can understand why some of the reaction happened to Lattice when they first came out with it.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, because I have seen some HR organizations skeptical about being responsible for contractors. So historically, contractors were at the side with procurement department or whatnot.
Yeah.
That's why there are vendor management systems available, and procurement department handled it. HR always was kind of a partner with procurement when it comes to contractor, but not really, kind of driving the strategy or whatnot. And then related to that, if HR is going to move towards managing the agents, is there an argument that could be made that existing Access Directory systems and et cetera could be used to manage the access permissions? We don't want to put it in the HR system, because if HR leaders say, hey, you know what, we don't want to be responsible, there's no performance review for agents, maybe not, I don't know. Obviously no pay, poor agents getting work done with no pay. I wonder what rights they would have, I have no idea. But you can see the argument to be made along those lines, right? So I don't know how to think about that. Now I'm off HR for like a couple of years, so any insights that you guys are wrestling in your own head?
I think
It's too early.
Yeah, I don't think we know. Again, it's like we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, Workday used the analogy of all of these rogue functions appearing because people well, I'm not really getting what I want from finance, so I'm just going to hire a few people over here. I think they're hoping that they want to get ahead of ensuring that that doesn't happen from an AI perspective or agent perspective.
Yeah. Anybody deployed agents yet in your workplace? In your own companies? Any agents? AI agents?
Yeah.
Yes? Brian, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to, back on the management issue, Jensen Huang is the one that actually said, I think that, IT is going to be the one that manages agents. And I think he's going the direction that I was describing of IT having been burned before by people, basically the ability to create custom apps and other things and all kinds of tools. I think the answer is not that one or the other owns it. It's like, what's our company policy and how do we work this together? Another part of my world, as Hannah knows, is how do you make flexible work work? How do you make hybrid work work? Saying to the workplace people, you're responsible for driving attendance in the office is an equally stupid statement to make, right? There's workplace plus HR plus IT that have to work together on that one. If you're going to actually think about how you manage agents in a workforce, I think the answer is not going to come from give that entirely over to IT or give it entirely to HR. It's got to be a joint partnership to figure out what the right structure, principles, and guidelines are.
The way I think about it, I'm less concerned about the implementation questions, of like who's managing the system access, and more concerned about what's the strategy piece of this. And like, to the extent that we have agents, like what do we expect the agents to be doing? What do we expect our humans to be doing? Again, the augmentation, like how are the agents and the humans working together? And to your point too, like, and how do we make sure that we don't have like a shadow organization of agents that are duplicating the effort of the humans? And I think HR absolutely has to be in those conversations. And in those conversations, a way that is thinking about kind of overall company strategy, overall company objectives, like efficiency of getting there, and also in a way that is thinking about what is good for the humans, because we do have a responsibility here to be good for the humans that are in our workforces. And I would not want to see a world in which AI agents are coming in and like immediately and absolutely replacing all the humans in the organization. I think if we're doing this all right, we should be playing the humans to what the humans are great at doing and the agents to what the agents are great at doing. And I think HR leaders can play an enormous role there in making sure that that conversation is happening at the company strategy level. And then, the implementation path flows out of that in some places, right? So I think HR will probably have a role in implementation, but it has to start first with a conversation about like, what are these agents doing? What are our humans doing? Are we allowing each of these two parties to play to their strengths and to like play together for the company and its objectives?
Yeah, interesting corollary to that would be if an agent is defined objective-oriented to do a particular task, you would think that if there are multiple agents to do those tasks independently, you got to have orchestration between the agents, and there got to be some sort of a rights for each, who is the master, who is the other one, right? It's a manager-worker type of relationship between the agents, and where does HR play a role in it? I think a lot is TBD in the realm of agents, at least in my simple mind. So.
And a lot of folks here have expertise in like, okay, what are best practices of overseeing work and managing work and like what humans are good at doing and what machines are good at doing. So I would hope to see at least like the folks here and in this room a really active part of that conversation. Again, both on the implementation, but more so on like, what's the strategy? What's the management? Like, what's the company trying to do? And what's the path for getting there?
Yeah, I think Anthropic released MCP recently. So similar to the MCP for agents, from an HR standpoint, do we need to create a framework that everybody hold each other, right, hands together and say, okay, that's how we want to treat these things. So
And I think that's part of how you avoid the, here's our 250,000 custom applications that like
exactly.
nobody has any
yeah,
oversight
probably that's not a
over.
good idea.
Right, but that's a great analogy, and I see
let's
companies
dodge
doing
chaos.
that. Exactly.
Exactly. From what we have seen, I wouldn't correlate to performance per se, but more about early tenures versus expert, meaning been doing the job for a while. We are seeing more at the early tenure using these type of tools for the day-to-day job activities versus somebody, they know where to take it out, software developer. They know where to go to the repo and look at it and either do a bug fixing or add a feature versus somebody starting out into the new module. Well, of course, they have the skill set, but trying to understand the context, that's where we're seeing some variations in the adoption and usage. So Brian, you were trying to jump in.
We're like, go ahead.
First off, big Claude fan. I have
There we go.
I have a mild Claude project dependency. That'll freely too.
We'll talk about that later. Me
There's,
too.
there's,
but-
the, there's the generational difference that you can see in a lot of data, right? The other thing that I've seen with some clients, especially if you look at like engineering teams, is there's a language dependency to some degree. There's also are you talking about a startup that's got fairly fresh new start code base, or are you talking about something that's even 10 years old where you've got 4 million lines of code and just the ability to extract value out of it is harder? So there's like multiple factors that go into play. There's definitely a greater level of adoption for people earlier in their career. And I've also had the discussion with a couple of leaders of companies that are thinking about, we have the traditional pyramid shape in our organization. We hire in early stage engineers. People have slowed that down like crazy. Are we going to move to a diamond? And other people are like, no, I'm going to keep hiring the junior ones because they're the ones that are adopting faster. So we're going to see how that plays out.
I'll share an interesting experience that we had at Databricks, which is that, and we're an AI company, but it was actually our less tenured employees that were the most resistant about it.
Oh, interesting.
And it all came down to job fear.
Wow.
And maybe that billboard on 101. Could have been that too. But it was particularly the SDR population, like they were very resistant to it and lots of concern about whether this was going to ultimately lead to the elimination of their role. Over time, they got more acclimated to it, but we saw, a lot of excitement from more tenured employees or in their career and less so from earlier career talent.
You have a question, right? Sorry.
Hi, I'm Nat from GP. AI is transforming everything in every company, not just one function, every part of the organization. Frequently in boardrooms, the question is, how will you transform the company? And I'm wondering, as CHROs, what role you play and any best practices that you will help us with.
Well, I think we play a very instrumental role. I mean, we do an offsite every May that we call Think Big, where we're given 4 or 5 different prompts, and the idea is to be sort of completely uninhibited by thinking about what needs to happen. And the prompt has been given to me and our chief of staff of our CEO to say, how do we rethink our org because of AI? And so a very strong statement that if our org's going to look different, then you better be at the helm in figuring it out. And so I think if we are not in the conversation in the room, then why not? Because ultimately this is how work gets done, and our responsibility is to make sure that we have the talent in order to get the work done.
That's exactly how I see it too, is that, the role of the CHRO and the people org in this transformation is at the forefront of it. Whether it's the company strategy or the leadership of the organization or the skill sets in your org or the structure of your org, every element of this change is something that we can help with. And so my expectation is that anyone who's in our seats or in the leadership team of a people organization should be thinking about and participating in those conversations, whether it's with the board or the leadership team.
And something that if we are helping with, we'd increase the chances of the future where this is Excel and it is massively augmentative and there's new lines of business and there's uncapped value that can happen here from this kind of transformation. And I worry about sometimes when these conversations are happening in rooms where HR leaders are not or where somebody advocating for the humans is not, it's really easy to get yourself in the job loss mindset and the fear mindset about this, which I think like that exists. That is one possible world, but there's so many other possible worlds here. And I really see my role in the role of CHROs is like help open people's eyes to the other possible worlds of how humans and AI can work together and how this can be transforming the talent workforce for like more exciting uncapped value for all of us, as opposed to the downsides of just like, oh no, is AI gonna take my job?
Brian, anything? Oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, we sort of focus very much on AI, but this is huge cultural consequences. And I think if this also isn't a conversation that's being had around the cultural implications, then we're also missing out there too. You know, we're realizing the need to be curious, to be adaptive. I mean, they're attributes that unless you do not have those attributes today, then you're not going to survive in this workplace. And so I think it's also making sure that you're rethinking the types of people that you're hiring, the types of people that you're promoting. Like, there just needs to be a complete mindset shift that has huge cultural consequences. And I know it's sort of obvious, but I think it needs to be explicit, not implicit.
One of the things, just building on that a little bit, but we have an interview we conduct for every single employee, no matter the role, seniority level, et cetera. One of the explicit skills we are looking for in that interview is intellectual openness. And it is exactly this, where we're just going into a transformative future. We can't predict everything that's gonna happen. We want to be bringing people into that future who are open to lots of different ways things can happen, open to using new tools. And that is something that like you don't do in the organization unless you have that skill and that feature and have the curiosity and the passion for like, okay, where are we going? We can co-create this together. And I think that's a thing, you know, that we look for, and I expect to see many more organizations looking for that much more aggressively in the future, because that's also what we as humans can bring here, and the like creative thinking and the openness. It's like, that's still comparative advantage for us.
That's a great segue and a nice logical stop for the conversation, intellectual openness and flexibility. I came in with some hypothesis, some got validated, some got challenged, and some new ones that I haven't even thought about it. So thank you for helping me, and I'm sure it's the same experience for all of you. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.